Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sabrina, and on behalf of Choice, I'd like to welcome you to today's program, Cutting Through the AI Noise, Practical Pathways for Academic Libraries, which is sponsored by Springer Nature. This session is one in a series of sponsored webinars from Choice that addresses new ideas and developments of interest to the academic library community. I'll just put a couple links in the chat where you can register for upcoming webinars and watch previous webinar recordings. Also, if you're interested in library technology, LibTech Insights, or LTI, is a content vertical from Choice that examines the day-to-day impact of library and education technology on academic librarians, researchers, and students. The channel provides practical guidance on technology trends and products, including AI and AI literacy, user experience, useful tools, and job profiles, all of which are written by and for librarians. You can find out more about LTI and read the blog, sign up for the newsletter via the links in the chat. We send one newsletter a week with our latest posts and some handpicked tech news stories, usually in the realm of AI. Now, before we get started, I'd like to point out just a few features of our webinar software. All attendees who join the presentation are automatically muted and your cameras are off, so don't worry about generating any noise or feedback. We've got that taken care of for you. In the main area of the screen, you can follow along with the presentation materials. To adjust the size of the slides or video, you can use the divider in the middle of the screen to slide the sizes to your liking. We are using the Q&A feature today. Please use it to submit questions or comments for our speakers. We'll answer as many questions as we have time for at the end of the presentation, so please do type your questions into the Q&A module as they occur to you. You can also use the upvote feature to highlight questions you'd like or would like to be addressed. Also, there's closed captioning available for today's session. To toggle the automated captions on or off, please use the Show Captions button on the bottom panel of your screen. You can also turn on automated translation for the captions by clicking the arrow button, toggling on translation, and selecting your preferred language. Last, please note that we are recording today's program and everyone who registered should receive a follow-up email with links to the recording and today's slides. And with that, we are ready to get started, so I will hand it over to Rob.
Thank you, Sabrina. And I want to say, as someone who's been an attendee for many of these choice webinars, but never been on this side of the screen, it is a real pleasure to work with Sabrina. She is such a pro. She has helped us through all of this process, and I'm really excited for our webinar today. So welcome everyone. I see the participant numbers ticking up. This is wild. I'm glad so many folks are in attendance. And today we're going to talk about AI in the libraries and cutting through the noise and getting to the real nitty-gritty of things. And I can't think of two better people to guide us in this process than Natalie Meyers and Kari Weaver. Can we go to the next slide, please? Uh, There we go. So, Kari is the AI Machine Learning Program Manager at OCL, which is the Ontario, help me out, Ontario Council for University Libraries. Is that right, Kari?
Ontario Council of University Libraries.
Ontario Council of University Libraries, and Natalie Meyers, who's the AI Researcher in Residence for ARL and CNI, so the Association of Research Libraries and the Coalition for Networked Information. Welcome, Natalie. And for folks who don't know me, I am currently the Director of Library Relations for North America for Springer Nature, which follows a good 15+ year career in academic libraries around the northeastern US here. So welcome to everybody today. So let's move to our third slide, just to give people a sense of what's on the agenda for today. There we go. So we've done our introductions. We're going to take a couple of quick minutes and do some quick polls that Natalie has prepared for us. Then we got about a half hour of our panel conversation, but we wanted to save a lot of time for the Q&A, which will be open for around 15 minutes. The Q&A is open, which means that you can see each other's questions and upvote them. And so when we get to that Q&A, we're going to start with the ones that have the most upvotes. So go ahead, dream up some good questions for us, and take a look as people are putting things in the Q&A, because your upvotes will help us determine. I assume we're going to have more questions than we have time to get to, given the number of people here. So let's make them good and let's get the good ones. And then we're going to take a couple minutes at the end to wrap up. I've got someone who says they see a black screen. I am seeing today's agenda, so I don't know. Thumbs up if people are seeing the agenda. All right. So Moving on from the agenda, then let's turn the screen over to Natalie so we can do our quick polls. These are to take people's temperature in terms of their familiarity with AI and the interests and concerns that they have. All right, so you have a QR code on the screen, and if you scan that or go to the link is also in the chat. Thank you, Sabrina. There will be some questions for you to fill out, and Natalie is going to share the results with us.
Hi everyone. Hopefully you see a link you can use to join the polls. This will help us get a little bit better acquainted with one another and how we're perceiving AI today. So we'd love to see how you rank these perceptions of AI in your day-to-day and your concerns. This is great. Keep them coming. Sabrina, how many do we have with us on the call so far?
We currently have a little over 500 attendees.
Excellent. So we see about 170 responses so far. I'm going to stay on this slide till we get to at least 300-ish and give people a chance to hop into the polling. And Kari, would you like to comment on these categories and how these rankings can inform us about the moment we're all in right now?
Yeah, so we're asking this question, and this is based off of a question that I ask quite a lot when I'm facilitating conversations about AI across higher education on campuses as I'm visiting some of our member libraries across the Oakville community. And people, these are all different perspectives that people have and bring from the kind of work that they do to conversations around AI. And the real, sort of trick here is all of these are a correct answer. But we're not letting you select all of the above. And thinking about and identifying sort of your perspective and those of the people that you are going to work most closely with when it comes to navigating AI can really help you ensure that you have varied perspectives in the conversation, which is always going to lead to the best end result, no matter what the problem is that you're trying to tackle. So we've given you this as a framing both for you to think about today and something for you to sort of take back in a very practical sense and have some conversation about.
I think that these categories help us to level set when we begin conversations about AI in different situations at the university or with research groups. You'll find people with each of these perspectives foremost in their mind walking into a meeting, and then hearing from people across every one of these perspectives during decision making or during budget setting or during future planning. So this is great to see, and I love the way you've structured this to help us frame some of our conversations today too. I'm going to move on now to our next question, which is whether you can tell us how you're currently using AI at work. And similar to Kari, this is a question I ask frequently. It helps us understand one another's day-to-day engagement with AI in various aspects of our roles, but it also helps us understand how people with different roles engage with AI in different capacities and with a different momentum across their daily tasks, but also across the audiences that they serve. So while we might see that not many are using AI to conduct their research yet, we might see a greater proportion who are beginning to use AI in their scholarly communication or encounter it in scholarly communication. And Rob will talk to us more about this, but this could be anything from helping you draft an abstract to helping you as a editor understand the breadth of what you're seeing in a given call. So there are a lot of different ways that we can encounter AI across these different moments in our workflow. And we see not many using AI for metadata enhancement. Yeah, 139 who haven't, but a healthy proportion of 38 who are already using AI to do metadata enhancement in many phases of their work. And even a handful using AI all the time in all phases of work for conducting research. And in Scalcom, 34 of us using it in a preponderance of phases of work. So as we mature the way the AI fits into different aspects of our work pipelines, we're going to see different uptake at different phases and different momentums across roles in the library itself, in the library community, and in the higher ed as a whole. So I really appreciate you engaging with this question. I'm going to leave it up till I see a little bit higher increment down there because I know we have more of us on here than 250. So let's see if we can get a few more responses on there. If you haven't joined the poll question, we'll pop another copy of the link in the chat for you. And you can also use the QR code that you see at the top of the slide to join the survey. Next, let's look at responsible roles of AI in scientific publication. I love talking to people about this because it helps us understand the way that scientific publications environment is changing because of AI and with the help of AI and the problems that AI brings with it. So there are many aspects of AI in scientific publication that are time saving, and there are many aspects that create expenditure and create a atmosphere of higher risk when it comes to hallucinated citations or when it comes to higher increase in submission rates and a higher increase of speed with which individual researchers can get publications to their publishers. So I hope this is helpful to you. We see almost all of us commenting and engaging here on this slide. And I'm seeing a few categories stick out. Among them, I'm seeing organization, research assistant, brainstorming, fact checking, wordsmithing. I'm seeing people using AI to correct their writing. I'm seeing people using AI for lit review, for translation, for transcription. I'm seeing formatting, citations. Anything else you see in there, Rob or Kari, that sticks out to you?
I mean, I'm seeing, don't understand the question. Natalie, are you able to full screen your browser window? Might help people see a little more detail. I'm curious for don't understand the question. I wonder if that's some folks who maybe are feeling like there are no responsible roles. I do see none in there. So maybe that's a way of responding to don't understand the question. But
You've
no,
got
there's
a
a
heart
lot in
there.
there. There we go.
Yep,
We got some hearts and
yep,
some thumbs up on that one.
you bet.
Okay. No, I'm seeing some interesting, yeah, tutor in there. Um, and number of things around data, as I think you touched on, lit review. So yeah, there's different areas, different ways people are throwing in there. It's interesting. Somebody's got checking math. I think you guys could t tell them better than me, but I worry especially about AI and math. They are not generally, unless they're optimized AIs for that use case, really going to be particularly good with math, especially if you throw a tricky word problem at them.
Yeah, you kind of need a niche model or a niche
Hmm.
session in your model for some of those problems, especially disciplinary problems. But you'll also see I'm a big fan of Wolfram Alpha. I've used it a lot to
Mm,
help me check my own math. And MathML really can change the way that we share math information in our scientific publications, but also it helps AI understand math in new ways. So as AI gets more comfortable in MathML, it becomes a little more capable. But I love the notion that we still need data editors and might need them more in the age of AI. So I really
absolutely.
appreciate seeing all the input on this slide. I think it's time for me to stop sharing now and for you to help us
Sounds
engage in a
good.
little more conversation.
So I will say tool not role really started spiking at the end there, and I like that reframing. That is very good, and that is definitely, I think, one thing you will hear from all three of us on the panel today is that really, it should be humans in the loop AI and not even just in the loop or on the loop, but frankly, driving the ship, so to speak, right? That AI doesn't replace us. It's a tool that we use. All right. So with that said, I want to start. Obviously, Natalie and Kari, you both have AI is literally in your titles, but can you share? Surely that wasn't always the case. Can you share how you first became involved in AI or machine learning work? Natalie, do you want to jump in first?
Sure, I'm happy to talk about that. During my library degree, my MLIS work at UC Berkeley, Howard Besser, one of my professors, told me that if I did GIS, I'd never be bored. And that led to work supporting modeling in snowpack analysis and in environmental change. Later in work on species migration and in contamination of San Francisco Bay through terrorist introduction of chemicals or environmental pollutants from industrial accidents. And then through that project and later at University of Notre Dame, I had the opportunity to work on computationally intensive research using models for malaria intervention analysis on its efficacy, but also on how we can most use the data around us in publications, in data sets, in weather to better understand the world around us. And that really was the beginning of my work in open modeling because those were projects I had to share models on between researchers, but also harmonize data sets for use in training the models and in setting up runs. And then after that, I became active in genomics research and supporting genomicists. And during the COVID-19 pandemic, that work brought me in touch with the COVID-19 HPC consortium and the modelers using those pooled resources. And out of that, I became active in the Research Data Alliance COVID-19 data sharing initiative for genomics, and later the Artificial Intelligence and Data Visitation Working Group of the Research Data Alliance, where models were just becoming ubiquitous, and I found myself leading an international team on writing an AI Bill of Rights for the RDA. And that was instrumental pivot point for me, and perhaps for many who had been using machine learning and agent-based modeling to now find themselves in a world of ubiquitous access to LLMs was quite a pivot.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's important, because so many of us look to that date when Chat GPT dropped in its sort of public beta as a turning point in history. But really, there are long and deep roots for machine learning and AI. And so, for someone who's been along that path, it's really a wonderful experience. Kari, can you tell us a bit about your experience?
Yeah, so my background comes sort of on the opposite side of libraries as Natalie. Well, Natalie's approach to this really is rooted in that strong research background. I have had a 2-decade career as a librarian in public services. where I've taught over 45,000 students in person and over 500,000 through asynchronous online learning I've created and deployed, and completed my doctorate focused on curriculum and instruction. And it's really been that background as a humanist and a social scientist and an expert in education that has informed but also led to my work with artificial intelligence. Actually, because of the COVID pandemic, I was part of a small group of experts in teaching and learning in my role at the University of Waterloo, who had been tasked with supporting faculty and students through the early days of emergency remote instruction that we all remember fondly, I'm sure. And with that, in early December 2022, our group was having a meeting to essentially wrap up, say, great job, everyone, pat ourselves on the back, on to the next. And the administrators who had sponsored that work said, hey, we're hearing something about this chat GTP thing, I think. Would you maybe refocus your efforts in that direction? And so eventually that brain trust, so we started to do that, and that brain trust eventually became more of a formalized campus committee where I ended up collaborating with colleagues to develop AI related training specific to graduate students, materials to support instructors, guidance and resources on teaching about AI and AI models, and redesigning learning assessments, and eventually developed the artificial intelligence disclosure aid framework to help articulate the use and disclose the use of AI in educational and research contexts, which has been successful beyond my wildest dreams in helping to address issues around disclosure. But like many out there, I was really doing this work off the side of my desk while managing a team of instructional design folks in the library and balancing the rest of the work in my position. And so in early 2025, the opportunity came up to take the position that I'm in now at the Ontario Council of University Libraries, which allows me to both fully devote myself to work around AI in academic libraries, but also to support library workers through really thoughtfully designed professional development on the topic. And it's been a really fantastic opportunity to sort of build out my technical skills and work in a very deep way with artificial intelligence and machine learning models, but also learn how to do evaluation of outputs and models themselves and think through the considerations that help to make this kind of work more values aligned with our needs and our sector. But I sort of always say, coming from that humanist background, the best part of doing work around AI in academic libraries is actually all of the people that I get to work with and meet in doing it. And I think that
Mhm.
that really rings true for
For
a lot of
sure.
folks who are doing this work.
Agreed. Agreed. It really is. The people who make this, worthwhile. Yeah. So I appreciate you centering that. Um, Obviously, as we've seen from our poll results, we have folks coming in today with a really wide range of experience with AI tools in different contexts. So, I wonder if each of you have suggestions for someone getting started with AI. What would be a good starting point just to dip your toes in the shallow end?
I was going to say, I'm happy to jump in, Natalie, if you'd like me to.
Go for it.
Um, I sort of always hear from across library contexts that folks are really stretched for time and capacity to engage with AI and feel like things are moving and changing so quickly that any time that they did devote might not actually be worth the effort. And so, with that in mind, I really encourage for folks to look at their work and maybe start with just one thing If you happen to be a heavy Web of Science user, maybe you focus on building familiarity with the Web of Science research assistant as your one thing, as an example. And if you happen to be part of a team, which most of us are, if everyone on your team can choose a different one thing and you can information share, now you've built, sort of a consensus or a basis of knowledge to work from without it being an overwhelming time and capacity commitment.
That makes sense, Kari. And again, that's that networking and having a community to share with is important. Natalie,
Yeah, I'd echo that. It's really important. What I've found is what works for me is that it's best if I can learn from someone whose work I admire. So I try to sync my choices with both the demands of my role and who I want to learn from. So, for example, I took Louisa Javrowski's Global AI Policy, Ethics, and Regulations 6 weeks course to support my work as co-chair of AIDV on that Bill of Rights work. And then later this past January, I took Gabriela Abragada Bruno, the author of The Ethics of the Algorithm. I took her AI ethics class this January because the landscape of AI ethics and the legality of applying AI ethics within AI governance frameworks is evolving really rapidly. So I wanted to learn more about it from a practitioner I admired, and that was Gabriella through her previous work. But keep your eyes open and match it to your time available, the mode of learning that you most respond to. Recently in New Zealand, I was at the farmers market in Nelson, and there was a big banner up, and it said AI Sandbox. And it was right next to the public library. So in I walked and I got to do AI Sandbox learning with their grad students in the context of a community academic and public library partnership that was really unique and awesome. So those are all valid ways to learn that might meet you where you are, literally the farmer's market or a legal question, and anywhere in between.
thanks, Natalie. That's awesome. I love it when I happen upon something like that and just that felicity, right? That serendipity. There we go. We librarians like serendipity. All right. So actually, it's already come up in the questions in the chat, but there are obviously a lot of folks out there who are opposed to using AI for a lot of different reasons, whether it's about environmental impact and land use, or concerns about the IP rights of creators, or fears that we're really encouraging negative social trends and reinforcing historical biases, excuse me. So, what would you say to a library worker who says they don't want to use AI? How would you approach that issue with them?
Carrie, is it okay if I take that one first?
Go for it.
Um, I offered to take this one first because I really admired Jer Miller's response to a similar question I asked her. And I find myself repeating a lot. So I'll share it with all of you here today. She's Senior Director of Health and Life Science Product Team at Microsoft. And when I asked her a similar question, she said, well, we all need to be prepared with a twofold response. There will be researchers that we support who are ready to use AI, while others are saying, no way. They might even be on the same team. So we have to be ready to address somebody who's jumping in feet first, to slow them down and help them know about the frameworks for determining the appropriate and legal uses of AI. And on the flip side, for those who are nervous about adoption or resisting adoption for very personal and ethical reasons, we need to be ready to explain the technical aspects of human in the loop AI governance mechanisms and see if they will satisfy these persons' concerns. Ultimately, as librarians, whether we personally choose to use AI or not in our own work, we have to be prepared to support researchers and research teams and students across the spectrum of adoption, along with AI and all its messy problems. So for me, it's not a question of do or do not, to quote Yoda, but a question of being really well prepared with that twofold response to help people, especially who are having conflicts of interest within teams or team projects or between professors and students, to find middle ground that is ethically sound and is not team destroying. I'm sure you have advice for us on that, Kari.
Yeah, so I think the first thing that I always say is feel your feelings. You are absolutely welcome to and entitled to those. And the concerns that you have validity, and it's absolutely worth sitting in that area of discomfort that you might feel. That tends to be the place where learning grows from. And so, while I would certainly second, we have to be prepared to serve our communities. I also think one of the core sort of values or characteristics that I see across library workers is innate curiosity about the world. And so I would really invite people, even as you sort of sit in that discomfort, to engage that curiosity and consider how understanding how AI works, where it succeeds, where it fails, where, one model might be useful but another not, and considering how it might be used in some sort of sensible or ethical fashion can actually help us better serve our communities and to advocate for responsible practices. And I think that's true whether or not it's something that you choose to use on a personal level.
Thanks, Kari. I'm reminded too of something you said the other day in our conversation, sort of preparing for this, which is, there are different frames for thinking about AI, and one is your personal use, one is your immediate professional use, and another is really the society-wide level. And if you're trying to have a society-wide impact on AI and how it's used and how it does things, then really, the political system and legal frameworks are sort of the right size and scope for taking on those issues. But obviously, we need to think about how we interact with all of these frames. So I wanted to touch on, since both of you have been involved and really deeply engaged, frankly, with the Coalition for Network Information's efforts to look at possible AI futures and what they might mean for academic libraries. I'm hoping that you can share for folks on this call who may be less familiar with that work a little bit about the Futurescapes Libraries AI initiative. And Natalie, I'm going to start with you because I know this is right in your wheelhouse.
Sure, I hope you'll forgive me for sharing the screen again because there's a lot of ground to cover here.
Mhm.
And I'm going to pop a few links in the chat too to help us because this work is multifaceted. But in a nutshell, the AI Futurescape project of Association of Research Libraries and Coalition for Networked Information is a set of AI futures scenarios. It is a toolkit and it is a series of workshops. All of them borrow from and employ futures thinking through the foresight method. And the effort really got started with work that was done through one-on-one interviews to develop the scenarios and workshops with over 300 people through focus groups and interviews in 2023 and 2024. That work was member developed between the Association of Research Libraries and the Coalition of Networked Information Joint Task Force on Scenario Planning for AI and Machine Learning Futures. And it was facilitated by Stratus and led by Cynthia Hudson Vitale, who's now at Johns Hopkins. Later, a IMLS grant called Futurescape Libraries extended those scenarios. And it took that envisioned future of 2035 and 4 scenarios built out of a terrific end state table. This autonomous AI future in which AI had limited intentionality in its AI process and design and high adoption and high adaptation, to a more democratized and socially integrated AI that had extensive intentionality, counterposed with perhaps a laissez-faire future where there was low intentionality and sort of ad hoc adoption. And another scenario where really AI became consumer facing and oriented and focused primarily on education and edutainment and entertainment as things that AI could both produce and enable. After this phase, the AI toolkit was developed as part of that IMLS workshop. You can see it here on the screen, and you can download it through the links in the chat. The toolkit was developed by Carnegie Mellon's Keith Webster. He's Dean of Libraries there at Carnegie Mellon University and a practicing futurist for many years. His toolkit provides a brief overview of scenario planning and future studies and provides a series of activities that can help assess a library or any organization's readiness to build toward uncertain futures. Then this past year at ARL and CNI, we had a series of toolkit workshops in person and virtually where participants learned tips and techniques for bringing AI futures planning back home to their own organizations to create actionable, cross-cutting, and scenario-specific plans, projects, and activities at their research libraries. The toolkit is open. Anyone can use it, and you can use it as a workshop guide, or you can use it to run a structured foresight exercise at a team meeting. You can use it as a strategic conversation starter. There are individual exercises that can serve as a catalyst for productive discussions on a leadership team or in a board scenario. Or you can use it as a capacity building tool to help bring up foresight literacy among your staff, your collaborators, or your campus partners, especially around strategic risk, resilience, and innovation. And finally, and perhaps most impactfully, you can use the toolkit as a companion to your strategic planning in the library or within your department to test, prioritize, or strengthen your planning, your budgeting, your hiring, or your external engagement. It'll help you have conversations about where AI sits in your organization, how people feel about it. Remember how Kari told us to sit with our feelings? And how to listen when we talk to one another about AI and productive ways that allow us to create plans for how we're all going to do our work together to support our organizations, our students, our departments, and so on. So I hope the toolkit will be useful to everyone on the call, and it's available out there for all of us to use.
So, Kari, you and I actually met at one of those ARL Futurescapes meetings led by Keith. And can you share a bit about how you've made use of the toolkit?
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to acknowledge that my colleague Catherine Steves, who I think is attending today, was heavily involved with the development and an author on those scenarios. But as you mentioned, we were able to attend Train the Trainer training with Keith, and I've subsequently been able to take the toolkit and deliver the programming by invitation at some of our member libraries. And so, as somebody who was a learner and is now a facilitator, I think the biggest comment I would give is they're very useful because it's so easy within our organizations to get bogged down in well, we can't do that because we tried this thing in the past and that didn't work for the following reasons. And really engaging with future thinking allows you to kind of like move beyond those sort of political or organizational forces that may
Mm-hmm.
be hampering you thinking through the potential and possibilities.
Awesome. Thanks, Kari. So I had a couple more questions that I think I'm going to skip for time because I want to make sure we get to the Q&A. But I am going to ask both Natalie and Kari if you have examples that you could share of libraries that are doing good work with AI that you think folks in attendance could build on. And again, we've already heard in the chat, right? People have concerns about resourcing. There are some one-person libraries here. So if you have examples where folks are making a difference without a big investment of time, money, and people, that would be especially helpful.
Sure. One of my favorites, and I always learn a ton at Coalition for Networked Information meetings. They have project briefings. They all become public on CNI.org through the past meetings link. This spring meeting was in Utah, and USU's team presented and shared the code for their scalable OCR pipeline that was used for USU's Digital Commons repository. It detects PDFs that don't have embedded text layers and performs pre-processing and OCR to improve accessibility for screen readers. That's just one example, and there are dozens more at CNI, but that one I loved, and I'll try and pop the GitHub link in the chat because I thought it was really cool.
Awesome. Thanks, Natalie. Kari, what about you?
Yeah, so I would say I often refer folks to one of our member libraries, the University of Toronto, which they've been doing a lot of incredible work around AI in the library space, but in particular, they have a really nice scoping decision tree for paid AI-powered research tools for those out there who are looking at vendor integrations and want some options for assessing those. I would also be really remiss if I didn't highlight that we have excellent professional development programming from OCL, lovingly designed by myself and my colleagues. That includes a reading club that we hold synchronously, but also has materials available for local and asynchronous reuse. A partnership article series with LibTech Insights, who is helping host us here today, and also a speaker series where we have folks from across our 24 member libraries who talk about interesting and innovative projects that they're doing using artificial intelligence and machine learning within their local contexts. And all of that is free and available to you just with registering. And finally, I also do often appreciate the work of the Ithaca S plus R organization.
Hmm.
Their research staff is doing a lot of evidence-based small scale research studies that can give us a really good sense of kind of what is happening with AI use across libraries and researchers and students, and how those different groups are actually grappling with AI in their specific contexts that I find helpful.
Absolutely. That is wonderful work on both fronts, both I think SNR, but also folks, if there are folks on this call engaged in their consortia in their regions, I would encourage you to take a look at OCL's work. And as Kari said, there are resources there that others can use that are free. So these things can be repurposed for your regional networks as well. All right, so one final question from me before we move to the broader Q&A. Obviously, it was right in the title. We've promised to help people cut through the noise. Hopefully, we've given them good ideas and advice about how to engage with AI. but I was thinking folks might like to hear about some of the myths and messaging about AI that you would encourage them to tune out. So what are some things that people should not listen to in terms of the noise that's out there?
I can take a stab at this. Anytime the words safely and AI go together, I get a little nervous. But one of my favorites lately is the myth that AI can help you find the best price on something. AI tools you control can improve deal finding, but AI tools retailers control, personalized ranking, dynamic pricing algorithms are systematically optimized against your interests. The net benefit to any individual consumer depends heavily on which tools are doing the work and who's in control of them. So, if you hear someone say, I'm just going to let AI decide what car to buy or what blender to buy or where to buy my favorite book from, and I'm going to set up my wallet so they can just spend my money and make that a little easier for me, especially on travel, now is not the time to make that leap. And there's a lot of lawmaking going on right now about dynamic pricing algorithms that are AI driven that are very unfair to consumers. So when you hear, I'm going to let AI do my buying for me, be wary. It might not be true.
Yeah, and I will jump in and say one of the things that's been on my mind most, and in fact, I was encouraged to see it pop up in the Q&A, so this will be a good transition point, is that I see a lot of discussion about AI and labor, talking about labor displacement, especially in our field. And well, in the long term, certainly labor trends in libraries will change and have been changing. And technological advancements like AI will be a component of that. It is not a one-to-one offset. As someone who is actively doing this work with artificial intelligence in libraries, while AI can absolutely improve efficiency and scalability, there is a ton of work involved in planning, implementing, ensuring quality, and iterating AI-enabled or augmented workflows. And I would really encourage folks to more strongly consider how their work might evolve with AI rather than focus on the idea of AI making them irrelevant. Work and truly enjoyable and engaging and really fun work is completely still very much there for those who are willing to consider that shift.
Excellent. Thanks, Kari. I appreciate that. And I see lots of thumbs up, so I think there's broader appreciation of that. So all right, as we transition to the Q&A, there is going to be a poll question that pops up for folks from my colleagues at Springer Nature. So as we take a look, I'm seeing what has got the most upvotes here. And right at the top is a really interesting question. How do we keep AI from turning librarians and librarianship into a reverse centaur role? I feel like I want to unpack that metaphor a bit. That's intense. I want to use AI as a tool when I think it's valuable rather than something that's integrated into everything I do. It seems like we're having our choice and independence as libraries taken away. So, Natalie, Kari, what do we think? First of all, reverse centaur. So is the idea that the AI is taking over as our brain and we're just the legs keeping things moving? I'm not sure, but um, do you have thoughts about how we sort of keep that line and keep AI as a tool and not as a everything everywhere all at once thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're in a really interesting space right now because the technology has, sort of recently become more broadly available than it previously was. And so we're going through that sort of like natural growth cycle at the moment where it feels like it's everywhere because everybody's experimenting with it in one way or another. There is something in that, right? Like we often learn by doing, companies learn by doing and seeing what fails and so forth, researchers the same. And so I do sort of think of it as a natural experimentation cycle, and there will be sort of outcomes of that that will stick around, and then there will be some that will sort of naturally fade. I remember the rise of the internet and the failure of, the dot-com bubble and pets.com. We can't make money because it costs so much to send pet food. So, right, like these things will sort of naturally level out. We haven't, not quite enough time has passed for that to happen yet. But we do need to be prepared for what that equilibrium state is going to be kind of on the other side of this growth phase. And that's the piece that I think about a lot, because how do I help support and position both myself but the 3,000 library workers across university libraries in Ontario to be able to you know do that work effectively once we get to that place of equilibrium.
Absolutely. I mean, I think in some ways that's where the futurescaping work is so important, right? To map out potential, impacts of different endpoints and then think about how do we help steer towards a better endpoint in the places where we can exert that influence. And if we see things going the wrong way, how do we mitigate harm, right? So excellent. We also have a lot of people obviously concerned about environmental impact on the call. So I have a question here from Alice Tierney Fife. Do you know if there's anything in development to reduce the environmental impact of AI? The way things are now, I can't accept there's any way of ethically using AI, even as it's embedded in our society in so many ways. So I think clearly Alice is channeling what a lot of folks are feeling. There's a lot of upvotes there, and we hear a lot about data centers and water demands and electricity and so on. So, Kari, you're going to jump
Yeah,
in?
I'll jump in, and I know Natalie has some really excellent thoughts on this one as well. But what I would say is I would love to see more libraries and library workers working with smaller and open source models, which, like, truthfully have become really excellent. And those tend to run on your laptop, on your phone, and by virtue of the size of the model and the way it functions,
Hmm.
tend to be significantly smaller and less resource
Right.
intensive. We're also seeing movements to increase screen power, supporting data centers, and all sorts of things to help address this. And it's very interesting. I had a conversation with somebody from the Environmental Defense Organization here in Canada somewhat recently about the environmental cost of AI, and they were saying, there's also potentially a lot of benefit for electrical grid management and improving energy performance through modeling and so forth that we can actually directly use AI to help support. So that's not to say that you shouldn't have these concerns or that they aren't real. They are. But I think the way in which environmental concerns are being thought about and addressed, like it is an area that is changing over time.
Thanks, Kari. Natalie, do you
Um, I would point out, I learned a lot more about this topic when I took my AI ethics class in January from Pontifical University, Chile. The fellow students were attorneys, environmental activists, librarians, policymakers from all over Latin America and Mexico. And the way that communities can respond to some of the risks and harms of AI are really varied depending on their democratic circumstances, depending on their zoning laws, depending on their history of successful activism, and how ready to go their
Right.
networks of resistance are, as well as their networks of information. And librarians are often part of both those groups, networks of resistance and networks of information. And we can be really powerful allies and advocates in the information space to help people understand what the law should be within a community and to help connect people to those active with experience in the various areas where peoples can be harmed because of AI or as a side effect of AI. And this
Right.
can be in the form of data centers, but it also can be in the form of judicial decision making or having an AI bailiff, or the sky's the limit really these days. And a lot of this is being litigated, but the law is slow and our needs are now. So what I would recommend, and I put a tiny link in the Q&A about this, and I'll pop one in the chat. I have been fortunate to participate in the library advisory group for the Open Forum for AI. And these topics are topics that OFAI addresses all the time. And that's part of where I go to be informed, to be helpful, and to be interacting across different groups who are concerned with these issues. Someone else in the Q&A asked a really good question about what do we do when people expect librarians to be experts about AI? I've been using models for over 20 years. I'm a novice every single day with new models and the new ways models behave, and certainly with the way we litigate and policy make around AI. It's a real Wild West. So it's okay to say, I don't know, I'll find out. And it's okay to say, I'll put you in touch with some people and find who those most valued voices are that can meet people's needs that might be in
Mhm.
need of resistance, activism, information, or even who's the best person and an industry partner to ask a question and get a straight answer.
Thank,
So librarians can help.
thank you, Natalie. I think that it really encapsulates a key takeaway that I hope people uh, bring from this session, which is that there are so many places of engagement on this issue, and really, as librarians, to be aware of those to help point our patrons to them, but also for our own sake to be engaged in our whether it's our professional associations or group like OFAI, as you just mentioned, right? There are ways to engage on this issue. There are people who care, who are out there, trying to move things and steer things in the right direction. And I think one thing that both of you are involved in is also developing standards and expectations around how people will use AI or disclose that they've used AI, right? Kari, we're working on that initiative as well. So um, I see we're coming up on time, so unfortunately we won't get to a number of the other great questions. I am going to just pop in the chat a link to our AI principles at Springer Nature, because I do want to point out that, and I saw a question, why are publishers pushing Gen AI on us? So I will say, as a publisher, I can only speak for Springer Nature, but our approach to AI is trying to be both aware of environmental impact, and we have a commitment to net zero as a company on carbon, but also We are committed to making sure humans are making the decisions, even when we use AI tools to support our business workflows. And the AI that we developed that is user facing is really designed in a way that it is an optional supplement for people to use. It's not something they're required to use to interact with our systems. So, with all that in mind, I also want to highlight because I assume and I hope that there are people on this call who are experienced, and obviously there's clearly a bunch of people who are focused on AI and sustainability. So I wanted to mention we do have a new book series on artificial intelligence and sustainable development, and the series editor is actually the Undersecretary General at the United Nations, so someone who is actively involved in these initiatives at a global scale. So I want to encourage you, if you're someone who is interested in this area, you can check out these books, but you can also, if you're writing on the topic, we are taking book proposals for that series, which is part of our AI ebook collection. Finally, just moving to the last slide, I want to share that I will be at ALA later this month. So if folks want to come chat with me, and again, my role is library relations. I am not a salesperson. My role is to be the voice for librarians inside Springer Nature. So if we haven't had a chance to talk, if you have issues with, frankly, how we're doing anything, or just things you want to tell us good job on, please come chat with me. Again, my goal is really to advocate for libraries inside the company and outside the company for our values and for our interests. So thank you all for joining us today, and I hope you enjoyed the session.
Great. Thanks so much, Rob. Yeah, I'll just wrap up and say thank you so much to Kari, Natalie, and Rob for taking the time to speak with us today. And thank you so much to our attendees for your questions and your comments. I'd like to remind our viewers that we did record today's program, so be on the lookout for a follow-up email from Choice with links to the recording, today's slides, and a resource list. Also, if you have a few minutes after the presentation to fill out a brief survey, we would really appreciate it. So thanks again to all of you out there for joining us. We hope you learned something new from the webinar and hope to see you again soon on another session. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.